It started with a glance that shouldn't have meant anything. The gallery was full of strangers sipping cheap wine, pretending to understand the brushstrokes and symbolism. But when he walked in tall, quiet, distracted by nothing and drawn by something, her eyes snapped to him like gravity had betrayed her. Her breath hitched, a second too long. He didn't smile, just looked, held her gaze, and somehow it was more intimate than a kiss. A gentle voice pulled her back. Mark, her fiancé, oblivious and proud as he introduced her to a critic. She smiled the way a good woman should, the way she'd trained herself to smile, the way she'd been taught love should look. But something in her stomach twisted. Not fear, not guilt, curiosity. He watched her through 2 exhibits and a crowded room. Never moved, just noticed her. Not the dress or the polite small talk she mastered. Her, the way her hands kept brushing the same spot on her wrist. The way her eyes didn't light up when she laughed with Mark. The way she stared too long at paintings of places she'd never been. She excused herself to the restroom and found him leaning against a marble column like he'd been waiting for her, not with confidence, but inevitability. "You don't belong here," he said softly, not unkind. Just true. She should have walked away, should have ignored the thunder in her chest, the way her skin felt suddenly aware of itself. Instead, she whispered, "I know." His name was Ethan, and he didn't ask for hers. He already knew it. He'd seen her in 3 other galleries over the past year. Never approached, never spoke. But he remembered the way she'd lingered in front of a painting of a lone woman standing at the edge of a cliff. The way she never held Mark's hand, only his arm. "Are you happy?" Ethan asked. She blinked. "That's not a fair question." He leaned closer. "Neither is wanting you." That night, she lay in bed beside the man she was supposed to marry in for months and stared at the ceiling, like it might offer answers. Mark's arm was draped over her waist, safe, expected, and so quiet. But inside her, Ethan's words echoed like thunder through a canyon. "Neither is wanting you." It was supposed to be a one-time conversation, an interruption, a brush with danger she'd never explore again. But 3 days later, she was standing outside the same cafe he mentioned in passing, unsure if she came by accident or intention. Ethan was already there. No greeting, no question, just a slow, knowing smile that made her skin hum. She sat across from him, heart pounding in the space between silence and confession. "I shouldn't be here," she said, not looking up. "But you are," he murmured. He didn't ask about her life. He didn't ask about Mark. He asked about her. The books she never finished, the cities she dreamed of, the way she used to dance in college when no one was watching. Things even she forgot. They talked until the sun dipped low, spilling gold between them like some sort of divine permission. He walked her to her car and didn't touch her, didn't lean in. But the space between their bodies pulsed like an unfinished sentence. That night, Mark asked why she was quiet. She blamed work, deadlines, traffic. But she was thinking about the way Ethan said her name once, like it was his and no one else's. 2 weeks passed, 2 more meetings, and still no kiss. No betrayal carved into skin. But her soul was already undone. On a rainy Thursday, she found herself standing in his apartment. It smelled of cedar and rain and something dangerously comforting. "I should go," she whispered, soaked and trembling. "You came," he replied, eyes dark and wide. "You're already here." He stepped forward, slow, like she was something sacred, and when his fingers reached up just a single touch to brush a strand of wet hair from her cheek, her breath shattered. He didn't kiss her, not yet. He touched her wrist instead, the one she always held when she was anxious, and she gasped like that was the first real touch she'd ever known, because maybe it was. Their bodies stood inches apart, trembling in a storm of tension and restraint. Her heart thrashed, not with fear but recognition, as if her soul had just remembered what it was meant to feel. "I don't want to ruin you," he whispered, voice barely audible over the rain. She met his eyes. "Then ruin everything else. But not this, not us." His hand slipped to her lower back, and she melted forward, chest against his. Still no kiss, just heat, breath, desperation wrapped in control, and that made it worse. That made it better. She left before midnight, soaked to the bone, lips still untouched, but soul scorched. Mark was asleep when she got home, peaceful, predictable. She slipped into bed beside him and felt nothing. Nothing except the ghost of Ethan's hands on her back and the terrifying ache that she'd never feel whole without them again. It happened on a day that didn't deserve it. No poetry, no candlelight, just a late afternoon with sky like ash and wind curling between buildings like secrets. She wasn't supposed to see him. She told herself that, repeated it like a prayer she never believed. But there she was, and there he was. He opened the door before she knocked, as if her arrival was inevitable, as if he had felt her nearing. This time, she didn't tremble. This time, she stepped inside like she had always belonged. Her coat dripped onto the wooden floor, hair wild from wind, eyes wide from everything she was pretending she didn't want. Neither spoke, and then his mouth met hers like it had waited lifetimes. Not hurried, not polite. It was a claiming, a plea. His hands slid up her arms, tracing the truth beneath her skin. Her body folded into his with a gasp, lips parting, breath mingling. The kiss slow and sacred and soaked in restraint. That snapped like a fraying thread. She felt her knees weaken, and he caught her, one hand gripping her waist, the other tangled in her hair. It was a kiss that hurt in all the right places. A kiss that said, "You're not his, not really. You've always been mine." And in that moment, she believed it. When they finally pulled apart, her chest rose and felt like waves crashing against something unmovable. "I'm not ready," she whispered. "For what?" he asked, voice rough, pupils blown. "For how much I feel," she said, trembling. He kissed her again, softer this time, slower, as if he wanted to rewrite the rules of intimacy with just his mouth. And then he didn't rush. He didn't press. He let her sit beside him on the couch, wrapped in a thick throw blanket. He brewed her tea and played music low enough that their silence could speak. His thumb traced the inside of her wrist while they talked about nothing and everything. It wasn't sex that night. It was closeness. It was the moment before the flame, the heat building slowly. In the spaces between their words, she stayed until dawn, fully clothed and completely undone. Her hand rested on his chest as she listened to the rhythm of his heart beneath her ear. It wasn't just desire. It was a need that threatened everything she thought she knew. She kissed him once more. Before leaving, quick, soft, like goodbye. But they both knew it wasn't. Mark asked her to look at wedding venues that afternoon. He spoke of linen colors and guest lists and where they'd honeymoon. She nodded and smiled and agreed. Her mouth moved, but her heart was still curled up in Ethan's arms, wrapped in quiet, burning truth. And for the first time, she wondered if she was strong enough to destroy something safe. For something that felt like freedom. She wasn't wearing red or lace or anything meant to seduce. Just a gray sweater, soft jeans, and trembling hands as she stood outside his door again, this time without excuses, without a lie, waiting on her tongue. When Ethan opened the door, he didn't say a word. He just stepped aside and let her in. The moment she passed through, something in her cracked. Not broke, cracked. Like an old dam giving way to a flood long held back. She turned to him, eyes wide, body still, but soul rushing toward him like it had been waiting years for permission. "I'm tired of pretending," she said. Ethan walked forward, slow, reverent, hands brushing her cheeks as he whispered, "Then don't." Their kiss didn't explode, it smoldered, slow, consuming. Her sweater fell to the floor like a discarded past, jeans peeled away by his patient hands. He kissed her with restraint that burned deeper than hunger. His mouth moved across her collarbone, down her spine, memorizing the places no one else had ever really touched. Her fingers clutched his back, nails pressing into muscle, needing something real to hold onto as her breath broke into fragments beneath him. The bed welcomed them like it had waited to. Sheets rustled, skin met skin. He didn't take her, she gave herself. Every breath, every ache, every piece of herself that had been locked away in someone else's life. Ethan worshipped her with silence and slow movements. He didn't rush. He explored, not like a man trying to win her, like one who already had. She gasped his name like it meant freedom, like it had become her tether to the world. When they collapsed into each other, tangled and breathless, it wasn't just sex that lingered in the air. It was recognition, completion, the terrifying relief of knowing she had crossed a line she could never return from. And she didn't want to. Later, her head resting on his chest, she whispered, "What happens now?" Ethan didn't offer promises. He didn't speak of futures or fairy tales. He said the one thing she needed. We stopped lying to ourselves. Tears burned her eyes, not from shame, but from truth. Because everything with Mark had been a life she was handed. But with Ethan, it was a life she chose. That night, she didn't go home. She let her phone ring unanswered. She let the world wonder. Because for once, she wasn't where she was supposed to be. She was where she belonged. The sun rose quietly over a world that didn't know she'd changed. She stood barefoot in Ethan's kitchen, wearing one of his shirts and nothing else. Hands wrapped around a mug of coffee that had long gone cold. The scent of him lingered in the fabric against her skin, in the quiet hum of his space, in the place between her ribs that no longer felt empty. He came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist, resting his chin on her shoulder like he'd done it 100 times. that they both knew this might be the last. "I can't disappear," she said softly. "I owe him the truth." Ethan didn't argue. He only nodded, holding her tighter. "You never belonged to him, but you do owe him honesty." She turned to face him. "And you?" "I don't want half of you," he said, eyes dark with ache. "I want all of you, but not stolen, not broken." Her heart twisted, because love, real love, wasn't just about wanting, it was about respecting. The cost: she left before noon. No kiss, no tears, just a look that said, "Wait for me," and a silence that said, "I might not come back." The door to her apartment creaked when she stepped in. Mark was there, tie loosened, sleeves rolled, pacing like a man who'd started to suspect the worst. "You didn't call," he said, voice flat. "I know," she replied, setting her keys down like they weighed 1,000 pounds. His face hardened. "You were with him, weren't you?" She didn't lie. Yes. It was the only mercy she could offer. Mark's breath caught like a punch. He didn't yell. He didn't beg. He just stared at her like he was trying to see the version of her that used to be his. "I loved you," he said. "I know," she whispered, voice cracking. "But I didn't." It broke something inside him, and yet he let her go. She packed her things slowly. Not just clothes, but the life she'd built for someone else. The life that never quite fit. She left the ring on the dresser, shining like a lie exposed to sunlight. And when the door closed behind her, she cried. Not for what she lost, but for the woman she'd finally found. She didn't run to Ethan. She gave it time. Space. A week passed. Then two. Then, one quiet morning, she knocked on his door. No umbrella, no suitcase, no dramatic kiss in the rain. Just her, free, whole, ready. He opened the door. Their eyes met, and without a word, he pulled her into him. This time, there was no hesitation, no fear, no guilt, only truth, only love, because she had belonged to someone else once. But her heart, it had always been his.